Hi, third graders. Today we're back to Unit 2 reading. So, this week we have focused on the key features of a personal narrative story. Remember, the word narrative means story, personal means it happens to a person. Okay, it's a person telling the story. They include events of a specific situation that they have gone through. Today, we are going to compare two personal narrative stories. We're going to say how they are alike, and we'll also contrast them to say how they are different. So, if you remember back to yesterday, we read Stage Fright. And remember, in this story, Bob was afraid to go on stage, and Maria helps him through his fear by telling him to picture everybody in the audience wearing a crazy hat. So, today in your packet, you are going to find this story right here. This is called Knitting Circle. Look at the picture before we start. That looks like an example of somebody's knitting project. Knitting is when people use yarn to create a sweater or a scarf. Okay, so let's read today Knitting Circle. Grandma opened her door to let me in. Her house was full of knitted knickknacks. The dining room table wore a knitted tablecloth. The couch and chairs wore knitted sweaters. I was bummed. I would rather play video games than join Grandma's knitting circle. But Mom made me give it a try. Grandma's friends looked up from their knitting when I walked into the living room. A teapot wore a knitted cozy on the coffee table in the middle of the room. We're excited about you joining our knitting circle, Marcos, Grandma said. All the women agreed. We'll teach you all the stitches you need to know. What do you want to make, dear? I'm not sure, Grandma, I said. Isn't knitting for girls? I've been a part of Grandma's knitting circle for years, said Grandpa, entering the room from the backyard. He wore a beautiful knitted sweater with a flying eagle on the back. I'm proud to say I made this sweater. Wow, I exclaimed. Maybe I could make a sweater with a football on the back. Have a seat, Grandma said as she poured me a cup of tea. Welcome to the knitting circle. All right, so let's think about who the author is. So when we first read up here, we don't know who it is, but because of the dialogue Grandma's talking here, we find out that the person telling the story is Marcos. Okay, and at first he is bummed. He's not excited to be part of Grandma's knitting circle. He doesn't want to do it. He thinks knitting's for girls until he gets the perspective from his grandpa and he sees how cool that sweater is. And then we now know what this picture is of. This is what Marcos made. We can infer this is what he made because this is what he wanted to make. Here, up here, we had the word knickknacks. Her house was full of knickknacks. Knickknacks are like little things people have on shelves. They can be figurines or all these little different things that just are decorations. All right, so in your packet, we're going to find this page and we're going to think about how Stage Fright and Knitting Circle, what these two stories have in common and what's different about them. All right, so here we go. Stage fright. If you remember, Bob had stage fright. And in this story, Marcos would rather play video games than knit. The people involved are the characters. These are called the characters. In Stage Fright, we have Bob and Maria. In the knitting circle, we have Marcos, Grandma, Grandpa. We also have her friends from the knitting, the women that are in the knitting circle. Okay, and here, let's talk about the summary. A summary is just a short thing about what happens in the story. Bob was scared to perform. Maria told him to imagine people with funny hats. Marcos is going to his grandma's to knit. He doesn't want to. He sees grandpa's sweater, and then he wants to make his own. So if we think about how these stories are the same, Bob is scared, Marcos isn't excited, and probably Bob isn't excited, but they are both helped by people in the story. Bob is helped by Maria. Who is Marcos helped by? Grandpa. Okay, so when we think about two different stories, we think about what they have in common. Okay, we think about each story. Bob was telling one story, Marcos was telling the other story. Both stories are told by a male or a boy. Okay, and remember that all of these features are going to help you. Right, remember, make sure you read today.